Here we have a plant that's actually just a phenomenal plant. It's actually the foundation, really, of Tecomate Seed Company. This plant's called Lab Lab. It comes from Australia. It is a forage, long growing season summer legume, high in protein. It is very drought tolerant. And when Gary Schwartz was starting the Tecomate system of providing high protein forage for whitetails to grow phenomenal whitetails, he was doing it in South Texas. You get 14 inches of rainfall a year if you're lucky. Very harsh country to grow anything in. So he started looking around and he found this plant, Lab Lab. And regions of Australia, very similar climates to South Texas, and they were growing the dickens out of this plant for cattle forage. He brought it in and found that it is a wondrous plant for whitetails. High protein, is browse tolerant once it matures, which this crop has had the chance to mature before it's been over browsed. And just a delicacy to whitetails, as you can see. Every one of these Lab Lab plants in here is clipped. When the plant matures, these older primary leaves and stems that were the first leaves and stems to start have become a little older, a little more rank. And so the deer tend to avoid them, but they're keeping the plant alive. They're conducting photosynthesis, and they're keeping this plant viable. As the deer eat the leaves, the younger leaves from inside this cage of older leaves, those leaves regrow. So it's constantly regrowing the leaves that the deer are browsing. That's where the real high protein is and the good nutrients, the more succulent and palatable forage is. So this plant is a 220-day maturation plant, which means you'll never see it go to seed here in the United States. I've only seen that happen once in the deep far south Florida, because it just will not put on a bean and mature before frost kills it. So that's great. That's what you're looking for. Forage type legumes, high protein legumes that will not mature and go away before they've done all that they can do for your deer herd. So we've got a great stand of Lab Lab, and we also have in this blend of Lab Lab Plus with added burgundy bush, a plant called ebony pea. Also in this blend is another indeterminate seeding summer legume, high in protein. It's called ebony pea. It is a medium-sized pea that's black, ebony pea, of course. And it also comes from Australia. It is a indeterminate seeder, meaning that like a soybean, a farm-grade soybean will mature in 90 days roughly. It puts on its beans, and then the plant dies. There's a little bit of forage value in the seeds of soybean, but the real forage value for whitetails is the foliage. So we want this foliage to stay there all summer, as long as possible. Feed our deer as long as we can, up until the frost kills these plants. So in these stands of Lab Lab Plus with ebony pea, you'll see some plants putting on some beans. If you break them open, you'll see the seeds are black. And this is the ebony pea, which is indeterminate seeding, putting on some beans here and there throughout the summer, but never maturing and going away. An awesome combo with Lab Lab. Burgundy bush was a plant I recommended for this plot project. I like it in a blend of dicotyledons and heavy seeded grains like the sorghum and the Lab Lab as somewhat of a fail-safe, but it's equally effective for nutrition for whitetails. It actually is not a dicotyledon, which Lab Lab, cowpeas, soybeans, dicotyledons, the first few leaves that emerge from the soil is where the rest of the plant comes from. So if you have a overly aggressive deer herd due to a higher density and less forage, they come in and really bang up your food plot, those dicotyledons just aren't going to make it. A plant like burgundy bush, which all the growth comes from the root collar, it's a rhizobium growth, small seeded summer pea. Because it comes from under the soil, the deer can really eat it down, and it actually has a chance to come back from the root collar. It actually may even in southern zones perennialize. It will frost kill, but the next spring, if the soil's not disturbed and the root systems are still intact, you can get another stand from this burgundy bush the following spring. A great little additive to a high protein blend like we've planted here as this summer food plot. A great little plant. Burgundy bush is browse tolerant, it's drought tolerant, and it's even tolerant of sandier soils like we have in the southeast, but also grows well in most soils, as you can see here in these heavier clay soils of North Georgia. Finally, we've got 3 different types of long growing season, indeterminate seeding, long maturation, high protein legumes, Lab Lab, ebony pea, and burgundy bush. Another element in this blend and in this recommended plot mix that we've gone with is white milo or sorghum. And sorghum is a heavy seeded grass. So it's not providing any real protein or really nutrition at all through the summer. You've done that with all of these high protein legumes. This does grow tall, it has a long shaft on it, and it provides a screen and a growing medium for these beans, these legumes. They'll actually vine around the sorghum stalks, and the sorghum stalks will actually just kind of screen them and shade them and give them a little support. The great thing about sorghum in this situation where you've got a plot for forage and for attraction and hunting is that right now these milo heads are producing seed, and the seed is very high in fat and carbohydrates. And what happens is once it matures, right about the time of the opening weekend of bow season, the deer will really turn on these sorghum heads. They'll scalp them, and so you're really pulling deer to this food plot for bow hunters in the early part of the bow season. So it's an excellent combination plant with these summer legumes that we've planted here.